All right, welcome back to Swayed Against the Grain. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. The subject matter is the word I wanted to use was edgy, but it's not edgy. It's just painful. It's painful subject matter. So if anybody struggles with, suicide or has any feelings toward that, I would highly recommend that you go back to the beginning of this video. There's a number for the national hotline for suicide, and I would encourage you to first and foremost, if you have any thoughts or feelings, just call them, reach out to them. You don't have to necessarily be considering doing it, but if it's on your mind, it's just good to know what your options are in terms of who you can talk to. At the end of this video as well, there will be a list of numbers. So if this is something that's on your mind or weighs heavily on you, please just fast forward to the very end of this video so that you can get all of the numbers for the Veterans National Hotline. There are going to be some websites as well that will have information that you can look at. So with all of that being said, if you are triggered by this subject, just take caution as we go through this video, because we will be talking about some pretty graphic stuff in terms of what we have seen ourselves and some of the feelings that we have in terms of how the military handles suicide, as well as how are we supposed to handle the suicide of our soldiers and sailors. But okay. So, welcome to Swayed Against the Grain. I'm Swayed. I'm joined by my sister Alex today, and I told her I wouldn't make her introduce herself because she didn't like that last time. But we have the privilege and honor of being here today to talk about some of the people that we have known that have committed suicide, as well as our personal interactions with those people. And I'd like to just kind of let the viewers know that, like, there's no easy way to broach this subject. It's too easy to make anybody angry over the topic, and that's not my intention. I know it's not yours. Our intention is to just tell the story of how we have personally dealt with it, who we've known. We're not going to say names during the podcast, but we will say in memory of some of those people that we knew once upon a time. So I would kind of like to, actually like to start this conversation with a story about you. So I was driving from the DC area into Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I was living there. This was a couple of years ago. So what was that year? It was 2018, 2019 time frame. I can't remember exactly right now. And I had a really particularly difficult day at work, where I just was not having a good time where I was working, and it was a big change from 82nd Airborne paratrooper to hospital life. And so I get this phone call from you, and I don't even remember what you said to me. I just remember that the tone of your voice scared the absolute hell out of me, because I'd never actually heard you sound so emotional in my entire life.
You're gonna make me cry.
Yeah, it was really painful. And you told me I just witnessed a suicide, and I wasn't there. I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't your first phone call, but I was the first person who picked up.
Yeah.
And I remember that you had to go after you told me what had happened. And I remember I called our dad right after that. And then with you on the phone, I was like, it's going to be okay. We're going to be fine. And then as soon as I called our dad, I just immediately broke down, because I'd never heard your voice so emotional before. And we're not a highly emotional family. We're very emotionally intelligent, I would say, but we're not necessarily a crying family. So that was, I think, the first time that suicide became more than just this affects other people. It doesn't just affect us, because you had just witnessed somebody take their own life. And it wasn't just a very I guess there's not a scale that you would measure someone taking their own life on, but it was like a really, really, it was extremely graphic.
Yeah, as I
There's
was
just
gonna
no,
say, the graphic would be
yeah. So
a
I'd
good
like for you to
word.
kind of tell why you called me that day.
So there was there's command next to mine, and we had just gotten back. My command, my deployment group had just gotten back from our first half of our deployment, and we were fixing something on our aircraft. So we were we had like the only group of people from my command on our helicopter. So it was like a really, really just bare flight line. And the neighboring command had an aircraft that they were spinning up as well, trying to fix or whatever they were doing with it. And one of the girls, while we were working, pointed out, like, she had just this like really weird look on her face, and she pointed to the aircraft. So it was very loud outside. It was, their little area was very hectic anyways. So we all turned around, and when I turned around, I saw this kid going down, and just on the ground, not moving. And it was right at the tail rotor of our aircraft, or of their aircraft, and none of us knew what had happened. So it was just like everything going on at one time. Seeing people running around, hearing their plane captain screaming. Like, it was already loud to begin with, and I could hear that scream very, very clearly.
You could hear the scream over the aircraft.
Oh, yeah. And she was freaking out, understandably, and everyone was freaking out.
Yeah.
And, like, shutting down aircraft isn't necessarily, like, instant. It takes, it's not slow, but it takes a second.
Yeah.
So we're jumping off the aircraft. I learned in that moment that I don't deal with extreme situations very well. I thought maybe I could, and I didn't know what to do. Totally panicked.
So what do you mean by you didn't deal with extreme situations? Because I remember what you told me, but what are you talking about exactly?
I wasn't calm. I didn't keep a level head. I was, what do I do? What do I do?
Did you freeze?
Yes. And I know that, like, looking at the whole situation afterwards and knowing the whole scenario of that it was dead on impact, to the blades, I had it in my head, like, run to this person and help this person. I'm going to cry.
It's okay, man. This is probably the first time that we've really had this discussion. So while you're kind of gaining your composure a little bit, in case anyone is unaware, this was a really high visibility case that actually hit the Navy Times. Basically, a young sailor was in a really bad way with his command. And according to the Navy Times, he reached out several times with to no avail. Nobody was willing to help him. Now, of course, this is just a story, and I'm not demeaning his command whatsoever, but being in the military, we know how difficult it is to actually get help when you ask for it.
Yeah.
And so this young man decided that he did not want to live, and he ran while a helicopter was running.
Yeah, well, the blades were spinning and the paddles on the tail were spinning.
And he jumped into the back.
Yes.
And so he was caught by the blades, and he was dead immediately.
So yeah, I had it in my head that I needed to run and try to help, and I froze, and it killed me for, I guess, even still, not doing anything about it, and like there was nothing I could do. He had died. But I just remember saying, like, like thinking maybe he's okay and he's gonna get up and someone's gonna go to him, and so I like stayed put, and like that bothers me. Like I said, I know I couldn't have done anything, but I like freaked out in my, own little bubble of people. And then we had people, higher ups from our command running outside because it was just like a quick, suddenly people were acting, but no, it seemed like forever before anybody went to him.
Yeah.
And so one of our senior chiefs was going to run out there, but it was still an active flight line, so
and you need a helmet, right?
You needed a cranial. So he like came running back and yelled to me to give him my cranial. So I ran to him to meet him on his way to me, and it was just a very graphic scene, and that's always really stuck with me, like what I saw. But it was rough. We've never had to deal with death, like really losing somebody close, or fuck, the worst for me was losing my hamster. Remember?
Yeah.
So that was just like a lot to process in that moment, and it felt extremely selfish for me to be the one crying and distraught when I wasn't in the mix. I was on the sidelines of it, but
yeah,
it was rough. It was extremely rough.
And I can imagine that a lot of people, when they come face to face with a situation where it's like, I could have done something, or maybe I could have said something, or, I was around when it happened, or I knew him, and I didn't say anything ever. Like, I just didn't even know. I think that most people feel like selfish when they are impacted by it. But the reality is, it's such a disruption to a normal existence that we have every day because, I don't want to say that there are few and far between, or even a lot of people that do contemplate suicide and then follow through with it. But when it does happen, it stops everything in your life,
Yeah.
Every single thing, because all of a sudden you remember every conversation you've ever had with them. You remember the impact that they either did have or did not have. You wonder why you didn't know them better, like why didn't I ever venture into that area, So there's just so many things that happen in that particular moment. Like, obviously we're saddened and we're distraught over the person's decision, but their decision, especially his, it wasn't in private. He did this in front of, I don't even know how many people. So every single person was there in that very intimate moment with him where he decided that he'd had enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I went through a few different stages of grieving in a matter of, days over it. And at one point I was angry with that person for like how fucked up of you to do this in front of people. Like, I was angry about it, and then I was heartbroken for him about it, that like it meant that much to him. Mm-hmm. That he did it in front of people.
Yeah.
And instantly we all knew that it was a suicide. Because, and I say this with no actual, like, I can't back it up with, like, I saw it. It was the first girl to point it out who saw it. But she had said that he was running to the tail paddles and that people were trying to pull him back. So we, discussing the whole situation from everyone else's, viewpoints, mm-hmm. we came to the conclusion that it was a suicide right off the bat. So it was just like a lot of emotions, a lot of different feelings of how I was taking it, how everyone else was taking it. Ultimately, it was just really sad and really hard, but there was a lot of anger too towards his command and the people who didn't help the situation. And like I said, I don't have firsthand knowledge in it, so I can't say anything for certain.
Yeah.
Just that it had to have been a lot to him to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again though, like, the thing is, when you are a service member, there are so many different perspectives to have on any one subject, but the one thing that most people seem to agree upon is that we're never given the full story.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times as well, we also witness a lot of people trying to get help with any amount of things, any subject, not even a suicide type subject, and they're just shot down like immediately. And we say, well, that's the Army, roll on, or that's the Navy, keep on sailing. Like,
Yeah.
like those are our viewpoints, that not mine or yours in particular, but those are senior leadership viewpoints, which is that's hard in and of itself to cope with, because, I remember that we were all really concerned for you because you had just witnessed this. And then your husband told me that one of the senior guys in your section, unit, company, whatever you want to call it, he had gotten really aggressive with you about the situation.
I don't know if I'd say aggressive. He perceived it different and had an issue with me wanting time away. Because most everybody was fine with staying, but that's not how I was processing it. I wanted a day to not be there or see it or think about it. And we still had a mission to meet. And although I understand that, it is hard to agree with it all the time. We're all very replaceable, and there's always a mission at hand. So that was also bothering me in the moment, because it was like, let me process. And he had an issue with it because I didn't know the kid personally, and I had an issue with that, and it got resolved. I got most of the day off, away from after having to go in and discuss it with a few people, but it was resolved. But that bothered me too, so soon after. And I'm glad I wasn't there for that day, because they needed people to wash the aircraft, people had volunteered from other commands to come and wash it, which was a really respectable thing,
Which makes the most sense, because why would you have your own people?
Oh God, that would be even more traumatizing.
Yeah.
Than it already was.
Yeah.
But
And so like I've actually heard this comment before. This guy had told me, well, when we had one of our soldiers soldiers, I'm gonna say soldiers. So when we had one of our soldiers die, in country, we had to wash out the vehicle that transported him back to the compound or whatever. So I don't see why you're dealing with it. Well, let's look at that for a second. First of all, you're in a war zone, which makes the rules different. Okay.
for you, is that what you're talking about?
No, for them, for that person.
Oh.
That individual, I had told him a story similar to this, and he was like, well, we would have to wash our own people's blood out of our own vehicles and stuff like that, And so it's like he was demeaning the meaning of, why would you not want to wash that off of the helicopter, And that's problematic for a lot of reasons, but two that I can think of off the top of my head is, one, if you're in a war situation and you have nobody to do it for you, and this is literally your only option, that's your only option. Two, you're in the States, you're not in wartime. So there's no reason to make your sailors or your soldiers or your people, your people that you're taking care of, suffer more than they have to.
Yeah.
Whether they knew the kid or not, So when he had told me about that story, about that guy being argumentative, we'll say, that really upset me.
And I guess if you want to look at it from away from my perspective and try to see it from this more senior person's point of view, maybe those things don't affect or hit home the same way. He dealt with it and processed it differently. Didn't agree with it in the moment. It bothered me in the moment. Annoys me now, but not everybody is going to react the same. And I can accept that now more than I did before. But
yeah. Yeah. This is such a touchy subject. This particular, you dealt with someone who chose to end their life. You saw the ending portion of that happen, You saw it, you know, there's no getting around that. Um, I had a sailor within the past couple of years who was sexually assaulted by an officer, same sex, and I reported it. And the Navy works different than the Army, obviously, and so I'm Army and he was Navy. But the person who assaulted him was Army. And so I reported it to both the Army and I reported it to the Navy. And when I took it to my senior NCO, he was like, well, the kid that I reported it for, he's like, well, he doesn't want to make a report on it. And I was like, that's fine. But he told me what happened. So now I have to report it. And he said, that's not how it works. And
Your Army people said that?
my Army person told me that. And I'm not an idiot. I know better, you know? So I continued to push it and push it and push it until I got so much pushback that they were like, stay in your fucking lane, you know? And I was being told this by much higher ranking people. I gave it to the people. I gave it to Sark and I gave it to Sharp. And I gave it to the two organizations that are supposed to deal with this. And I pushed as much as I could. But the reason I bring this up, that senior NCO that continued to tell me, just back off, back off, back off. That officer is a doctor and he just earned his boards and he just did this and, you know, we're trying not to make life difficult or whatever. All of that was going on, and my sailor, who was a young sailor, told me that he wanted to kill himself because he was drunk when it happened and he was taken advantage of, you know? And the senior NCO didn't give two shits about that. He was angry that I had to take my guy, my sailor, out of the clinic to go to behavioral health and to sit there with him while he cried as quietly and silently as he could because he'd just been assaulted. He wasn't raped, thank God, but he had been assaulted. Any contact that's unwanted is assault. And he didn't know how to process that. They didn't care. They didn't never ask me again. It was just me, the only time like dealing with this kid. And his, you know, my biggest fear was that he was going to commit suicide. And nobody else seemed to care because it affected and got in the way of the mission, which was to keep the clinic fully staffed.
It's disgusting in a way. And I mean, it's like you said, it's a touchy subject, but I don't feel like enough people in the military, and I can only talk on the military because I don't have a civilian experience like that. But to me, it feels like not enough people in the military take it seriously. And it's hard sometimes, you know, to know where the line's at and if you're crossing it. Because you just get so comfortable in your everyday, you know, life and tasking at work, you know, and we get those talks all the time, you know, suicide prevention, like every safety stand down has one. It's just part of the bullets and the bullet points. And I just feel like they're just words, you know, and it's crappy because at one of the safety stand downs that I had, that's when, like, during all that, you know, we had our suicide prevention, we had our sapper talk, we had all that stuff. And then at the end of it, our skipper came up and informed us that we had a sailor at our command kill himself. And so it was just like,
Was this he was the first one, right?
No. He was the last one that I've personally dealt with.
Okay. So let's set up the timeline here. So the first one, you were on deployment.
Yeah.
And someone committed suicide while you were on deployment.
Yeah.
And you didn't know him personally, but you did know of him.
Yeah, and that's why it's so hard to know when you're crossing a line or, you know, if you're contributing to somebody's pain. I didn't know him personally, like, well. I think I had a total of 2 interactions with him. And the first interaction, we were underway on the boat, and I had worked an extremely long shift, and I was wearing his float coat, and he was the night check, so he needed the float coat. And I was in a rush doing whatever I was doing, trying to, navigate the boat. And he asked me for the float coat, and I was like, why the fuck do you need it? Like, get a different fucking float coat. Like, I was just angry. I was frustrated and just like, toss it, like, whatever, here's your fucking float coat. Like, angry.
Mm.
And he was just like, sorry, I need the float coat. Like, just like, did nothing wrong. Said nothing wrong. I was angry because of my own day. That was my first interaction with him. And that will always bother me a lot. And then my next interaction with him was probably a few months later, or maybe a couple months later, and it was more positive. I was slightly chatty, trying to be nice to him because I don't want to be that person that's mean. I hate that. I hate when I see it, And so it was like a more positive interaction. And then a few months later, I deployed, and however long into it, they sat us down and they told us that he had killed himself. And I cried a lot, and I felt bad crying a lot because I didn't know him like everybody else had. I hadn't been at the command as long as everybody else on that deployment had been. So they knew him well. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those people weren't nice to him too. And it's just one of the guiltiest and shittiest feelings, knowing that you didn't have a positive impact every single interaction on someone's life when you find out they do something like that. Mm-hmm. And that tore me up a lot. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's hard to know when you're crossing a line or anything like that. And, I get caught up in my everyday work life and joke around with people and, try to, give them shit and make it fun. And they interact well, and, you're not doing anything bad or mean. It's just, you're joking with them. Like, they're your friend, know? And then sometimes you have to be stern with them. And then it's like, well, am I crossing a line there too? Like, is my sternness going to be your breaking point? Is my lecture to you for doing something you shouldn't have done going to be your breaking point? Am I going to be rude to you because of my own issues, and that's going to be your breaking point? Because that's what was crossing my mind with that kid. I didn't have enough interactions with him, but I wondered, how I acted, was that part of your stress? Was that part of just bogging him down? And I won't forgive myself for that. Mm-hmm. And I want everyone to be nice to everyone. It's tough.
Yeah,
it's really tough,
especially in our jobs, because it's. I would say that the balance is being tough, but not being cruel.
Yeah, and they're rougher environments.
Yeah, they are.
The way we interact, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but the way we interact at work and like I said, the environment is very different than an office job. It's stressful. I'm not saying an office job isn't stressful, but it's harsher. And my job is nowhere near as harsh, I'm sure, as other people's jobs in the military, but the environment is definitely rough sometimes.
Yeah.
And you can't always just lay down and be super nice to everybody and, try to be accommodating to everybody, because people will take advantage. So.
Yeah, that's very true. So, yeah, no, that's 100% true. So that was your first.
That was the first
suicide that you really had to deal with in the Navy. Mm-hmm. The second one was the young man that took his life in front of you and others.
Yes.
And then this all happened within a year time frame, didn't it? A year and a half, maybe 2?
I think so. I think it was within a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I hadn't been stationed up in Virginia for very long when all this happened. Yeah. I think I had just gotten up here. So both of those happened. And then the third one is probably the most difficult one to talk about.
Yeah. So I had worked with this kid this is probably like the happiest kid I've ever seen in an environment that was just everyone was so angry all the time. He's always smiling, and that's when you hear it all the time, like people who are always smiling doesn't mean they're always happy, and that stereotypical like I never saw it coming, that was just on point. That he worked for me. He was a goofy kid, funny, could take a joke, just could dish it out. Like, he was a funny kid, very enjoyable kid. But sometimes he didn't listen, just messed things up, just there's a lot going on in the shop that we worked in. So I found myself from time to time sitting down and be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you fucked this up. This is fucked up. I need you to pay more attention. You're handling a lot of stuff all day long. A couple times I would just get frustrated, and I would never be mean to him. At least I hope it never seemed like I was being mean to him. I just have to give that supervisor lecture of, dude, you need to be doing better. I know you can do better. You need to be doing better. And there was one time that I just like kind of, not to his face, but with one of my other coworkers that was my same rank and same kind of supervisor position. I told him, like, I don't know what to do with this, because it just seems like a constant. It wasn't just him, but it seems like a constant. These kids are just not paying attention, and it's things that they need to be paying attention to. So he called him, and he's like, and this changed my way of dealing with problems, like, from that point on. But
in a positive or a negative?
In a positive way.
The guy that you told this to called him?
Yeah. So the other supervisor that I talked to called the kid that worked for us, and he's like, what's going on? Not, hey, this is what you're doing wrong. This is what I found. This is what you need to fix. Just, what's going on? I've noticed, you seem a little off. What's wrong?
Yeah.
I had never taken that approach before, and it seems really simple.
Well, how old were you at this time?
24,
Yeah.
Either way.
I mean, well, no, not either way. Not either way. That's one of the points here that's so important to showcase. How many times do we just do what we were taught how to do? It's really easy to lead with an iron fist, because that's all we've ever known, either as kids when we were growing up or when we got into the military. We had these iron fist leaders, and we just happened to not be, I don't want to even say sensitive. We just happened to not question it,
as much, maybe.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that you were shown a different way of doing things, probably by someone who had a few years more of experience.
Actually, no, he was just a really mellow person.
Okay.
Just a really laid back person that not much would bother. So I think that's, his approach was just the way he lived his life, just a really, really chill person. But yeah, he asked him, what's going on? And they had a long talk about that he really wasn't feeling all right, and he had a lot of things on his mind, and he was going through stuff, and that I never would have known, never would have thought to ask. And it's not like we didn't have personal interactions, while we were working. It was just, I never would have thought to ask it. And he had told that other supervisor, like, not in detail, but just that he wasn't all right all the time. And that supervisor didn't tell me everything that was said, but just let me know, like, hey, he's going through some stuff, and then I was like, okay, I need to change how I'm approaching this kid, because I liked the way that the other supervisor had approached him. It seemed way more personable and just more like a human being should be. So, we had just a kind of like a continuous interaction like this. Like, every once in a while he would mess up, and I would ask him, I'd be like, hey dude, is everything all right? Like, it doesn't seem like your head's really in it, and he would talk to me real lightly and briefly about, like, oh yeah, sorry, just kind of my head's somewhere else, like, and I would just, all right dude, that's fine, just keep in mind. So I was like a little smoother. But like I said, he was one of the happiest kids I'd ever seen at work. Anybody could come up to the window to check things out, and he was just good mood all the time. And And we had a lot of fun, just teasing and being teased by him, and just interact, just normal personable interactions. And then it came time for him to go back to the shop, to his actual shop. And
so he was kind of on loan to you guys.
Yeah, he was on loan to us.
Okay.
And really it was my first interaction of supervising, like actually being in charge of people. So I definitely learned a lot. But yeah, so he was my favorite, I would say. One of my favorites in there. Just because he was such a funny, chill dude. And the day that he was checking out, I think it was like over like a Friday or something. So like we weren't going to see him for a few days. But he like looked like he was going to cry, like he was sad to leave. And so like I tried to make it like a light situation and, tease him a little and, make it funny instead of like sad. But it made me sad too. Like I didn't want him to go. Yeah, he left the shop, worked in his actual shop for a little bit, and I would see him in the hallway and I wouldn't always say hi. He wouldn't always say hi. It was just kind of like, you just get sucked back into your work life and your work mode and ignore, Yeah, and then we're at a safety stand down and a skipper comes in. We're already waiting to be let go, like, come on, like, let's get this fucking thing over with. And he came in and he's like, I don't know how to say this to everybody. We lost a sailor. And then when he said his name, I just was like, what the fuck, and everyone just sitting there. And I was just like, no, like, what the fuck? He had gone on leave. So I hadn't seen him. So it wasn't abnormal to not see him. But I guess he did it while he was on leave, while he went back home. And I just like broke down. I tried to run out of there and just lost it. Because I was like, that was a kid that meant a lot to me. It was like, first interaction of having someone that he was my sailor. At least for a little while, he was my sailor. And yeah, they had us all. They do all their thing where they want to send the chaplain around and get everyone together, and everyone had to stay. And of course, me, I wanted to leave. I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, because you tend to deal with your emotions in private.
Yeah, I didn't want to be, because I had just bawled in front of everybody. Like, I didn't care. I just was sad for him. It tore me up that he was so sad that it led him to do that. And that, again, why didn't I say hi in the hallway more? Why didn't I go up and, just see how he was doing more and just have that same interaction we had when he was working for me? Like, why didn't I do that? And they do their fucking rodeo of, okay, chaplain comes and talks to you. And I know that shit's probably good for the majority. To me, it just seemed detached and like...
Just feels kind of like a show.
Like routine.
Yeah.
And because people are always talking about like that suicide prevention and, pay attention, say something, ask something. And I think it's ACT is the... what you're supposed to do. It stands for something. I'm a terrible fucking supervisor. I don't remember it, but yeah, it just seemed routine. Seemed like they don't really care. To me, it just seemed like they saw it as, here's another person that we're down. We gotta compensate. And to me, it was more personal than that.
Yeah.
And then I would see people that were not nice to him, that were crying and all upset about it. And it made me so angry, because it's like, you weren't nice to this kid and you have the fucking balls to cry and be sad. And I mean, they deserve to be sad, sure.
Yeah.
But it made me angry, because it's like, who the fuck do you think you are? You're mean to the kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was hard. Cried a lot about it. And then they had a memorial service for him. And we all had to get into our dress whites. And I hadn't cried for a little while, like probably a week by this point. And I remember I was driving to the chapel, little church on base, and I just broke down again because it was like, this kid's gone. You know, like just a reminder again that, because it doesn't seem real. But yeah, so that was hard to see his family. Everyone went through a line and we all shook hands with his family, and there was a lot of tears. They handled it better than I think I could have if I was the family member, you know, sitting there shaking hands with every person that interacted with him. I was a little angry about that service because our skipper had asked us to say, like, give him like things to say about him, because he obviously doesn't know him as well as we knew him. So he's like, talk about him so that, you know, we can share your thoughts with everybody. So we wrote down all these things, you know, these funny things about him that he liked, that he said, you know, that he was like the happiest motherfucker in the most fucking depressing part of the command. And none of those things were said. So it just felt like even more angry to me. Like, here's this kid that you could have said the things that the people who knew him, at least in the work world, who knew him, like what they had to say. And he kept it more PC, which probably understandable, but I know in the moment made me angry. But
it's understandable to some degree. It's like I watch it all the time with the 82nd. You know, I still follow their page, and I'll see them post, you know, we lost another, you know, till Valhalla, slip away paratrooper, and it's like they say all these things, and it's like there's not one piece of information in here that offers any insight into who this human being was.
Yeah.
You know? And I've seen enough of the suicide, you know, posts that it's clear to see that they have a template. You know, they have to have a template.
I do get it. It's not like they get to be, like, they're the superiors or the higher ups that have to be more sane and level headed than I get to be. You know, so I get it. I do, I guess, but I don't have to like it.
Yeah.
You know? I was telling you just the other day that every once in a while I will scroll through my phone looking for something, and his contact is still on my phone, and I'll look at it for a little bit and feel that same, you know, like sad feeling. And I kept his little memorial pamphlet. I don't think about it all the time, thank God, because that would just crush me all the time. But I do think about him, and I do miss him a lot. And he was a good kid, and I'm extremely sorry for his family. And I mean, I guess in a way, if that was something that was going to make him feel better, then I guess I'm happy that he reached a point that he was going to feel okay, if he did feel okay.
You're talking about relieving the pain.
Yeah. But I am sad that that's what it came to.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people need to take it more seriously. I think a lot more leadership, and even not leadership, just your everyday person, needs to consider, like, hey, this person might be in a really bad place. Just because you're not doesn't mean they're not.
Yeah.
And find that line of, like, fucking, you know, you can joke and have fun, but don't be cruel. And read that person. If they don't like it, stop it, you know? If you see someone that doesn't like it, stop it. Don't back down just because there's, you know, stronger personalities pursuing it, you know?
Yeah, that's something that has always been a major point for me. So when I was a really young private, and anyone who knows me knows that I don't even have to say her name. They know who I'm talking about. The she who shall not be named. Even you know. And I was an E2 when she came into my life, and she treated me so cruelly that I remember, again, I'm not an emotional person in terms of crying, but I came home and she had turned my entire platoon against me, And my NCO at the time was he's just a skis ball. Like, absolutely no good would come from him. And I went home and I laid down on the bed in my full uniform, boots on and everything. And I just remember my wife came into the room and I said, just get the fuck out. And, she didn't know how to deal with that. And so she left. And I just remember being like, I hope I get into a car crash tomorrow. I just want to die. And that's all I could think about. That every day that I went to work having to deal with this woman, I wanted to fucking kill myself, like, every single day. And it wasn't until I had a new NCO who was a female. She came into the platoon and she treated me like shit, just like everybody else did. And I don't remember what happened, but this one particular day, about 2 months into her being my NCO, she looked at me and she's just like, holy shit, you're not causing the problem. She's like, she is treating you like absolute trash. And I didn't realize that it wasn't you until just now. And that was the day that I was like, I guess I don't want to die today. Like, how funny, because it's like I genuinely, I was going down such a dark hole. I was drinking so much. I mean, if I didn't kill myself, like, by want to actually, like, commit the act to kill myself, I was drinking myself into death.
Yeah.
Like, everybody knew I was drinking more and more and more and more. And it wasn't until she said that I was like, maybe I don't want to die. Maybe I can be a good soldier. Maybe I can do something here. And that one interaction with that one soldier, like, completely changed my life around.
It's a fragile thing.
It is, yeah. And like, I don't like to feel like a victim.
Yeah.
But I can't, and it's hard to say like I've been that fragile, because anybody who knows me now probably would never consider me to be fragile. But I was fragile enough when I was young enough that the cruel acts of an NCO, could destroy my life. So I understand. I understand these young kids that they just, when they have nobody and the person is higher ranking than them, and there seems like there's no escape and nobody to shelter them, even just a little bit, like after that NCO in particular, the one that was coming after me consistently, I became a bully to bullies. So if I found somebody that was an underdog and I saw they were being picked on, I would just destroy with every piece of my heart the person that was going after them. And I mean, if any of those people ever were to watch this, like, they would know that's why Perez came after me,
I feel the same way. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I hate things that are unfair, or just like someone being mean to somebody that, even if they deserved it, like, it's just not right, and I get the same way. I don't think I have really impacted anybody enough to think like, oh, this person came at me, but I hate to see it, and I'll fucking stop it. I have someone that works with me that knew the person very well that had taken his life, that worked for me, and I'm always extra attentive to just how he's taking things. And I've said stuff in the past of, hey, he's not liking this, you need to stop. Like, and I'm glad that he's, whether it was just like a slip or a trusted moment, but said like, hey, no, I don't like this, when I asked like, what's wrong, and yeah, like, I'm like maybe a little extra protective of his emotions, just because I don't want him to feel like he needs to be in the same position that his friend was.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this might sound very like touchy-feely for a lot of the guys that got out like a few years back, and even I was speaking to someone who is a sergeant major, and she said something like, I just don't understand why people don't report things, and she didn't say it in a condescending way. She said it like, I was raised by an infantry person, and so, or an infantryman. So like my view of the world is just vastly different. And she said, but I'm aware that my view of the world is extremely different. And like recently I went and talked to her and I said, I'm worried about these two NCOs. I'm worried that they're going to be taken for all that they're worth. They're E5s, that nobody needs to stick up for them. But I felt like it was important to stick up for them, even though nobody needs to. Because, and the first thing out of people's mouths is, well, why don't they come say something? I'm saying something.
Yeah.
I'm saying it. How about you listen to what I'm saying?
Yeah, because that should carry just as much weight.
Yeah, we can intervene at any time. The reality is we either stop the suicide right now or we wait 10 years and then we hear about our friends and the people that we grew up with committing suicide. Very much like the Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans.
It's sad because I don't know if you've really paid attention or noticed, but there have been a few suicides this year. One was recently, I think, on Navy Times. It's really sad, and I just feel like it's not taken as seriously, and people need to be standing up more and really trying to do something about it.
Yeah,
it needs to be better. Your mental health needs to be taken seriously. This job is stressful. Takes a lot out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Takes, I think, a lot of your, it will take more than it will give. And your mental health should be just as big a priority to the military as war. I mean, it is a war on us, on our mental health.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see how many people are actually doing it.
Oh, yeah. It's so interesting that you say that because, so obviously 2020 is a bad year and we all know that.
Yeah.
I talked about it in our last podcast that we did. So I texted one of my senior NCOs after being on a detail for 6 months. It was 2 nights on, 12-hour shifts for 2 nights, and then 2 days off or 2 nights off. So it was a night shift first of all, and 2 nights on, 2 nights off. I wasn't able to do like anything like travel or go anywhere. I mean, obviously it's COVID, but I couldn't even come down here because I would have to turn right back around, and I was up only during the night. And so they had me on this detail from June until, what month is it now? It's November. So they had me on it until the end of October, from June to October. And I texted my NCO and I was like, I basically was like, I'm struggling really bad. I have no human contact. Like, I need relief. Like, I need leave or I need something because I am just not doing well. Like, I'm literally alone 24/7. And we actually, got into a pretty big fight about the whole thing. They said that my texting was inappropriate and that I was a keyboard warrior, when in reality it's that I work at night and everybody works during the day. So the only time I could really get anything out was, when I was awake. Mm-hmm. And his response was, I'll be here for you. But then he scolded me when he said, because he came down while I was on duty and he was like, what is it that you, what's your solution to everything? And I was like, well, I know my solution. I'm getting the fuck out of the military. And he's like, oh yeah, of course you are. I'm like, what? And then he said, he's like, what legacy do you leave behind for the soldiers that, your soldiers that are watching you? Like, what's the legacy that you're leaving for them? And the only thing I could even fathom to think was, and I said it to him, I was like, I'm leaving a legacy that they don't have to stay in this abusive and toxic relationship anymore. Mm-mm. Because that's what this ends up being. Like, look at me. I'm an E5. I'm not an E1 or an E2 who has literally no ability to even come talk to you. And here I am telling you outright, I am struggling really, really badly. I'm alone 24/7. Please help me. Please get me leave. And he did. He got me leave. But it took an argument. it took me not backing down to be able to get that. Like, it felt like it took so much more energy to just have a normal conversation.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
not everybody is capable of that.
no.
You know, like that you pushed it. You pursued what you knew was going to help you.
Yeah.
And not everyone's equipped to do that. It needs to be taken more seriously. Like if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm struggling." Okay, what do we need to do to make it better?
Yeah.
And I get you have a job. That's fine. The job's going to be there no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. But there needs to be more leadership that's like how you think of you're coming to me with just talking. Okay, well, we're going to deal with it. It shouldn't take a fight. You shouldn't have to ram heads constantly just to get a fucking little bit of relief and just space and or something that helps you deal and cope, you know?
Yeah. So the military wants factory workers who don't think, who don't question, who don't do anything. So one of my one of the things that I've heard that honestly resonated the most with me about service members and problems was I don't want to hear complaints. I want to hear solutions, right? So listen, all the solutions that we have right now that the military has given us, obviously some of those do work and some of those don't work. So I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell the audience or whoever might be watching, here are some of the things that I do to try and make myself more available to people. For one, Sergeant Major of the Army Daily, he said that yelling does not make a leader. It doesn't.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been notorious for doing. I used to yell at people all the time, and I have no doubt that there are plenty of people who could watch this and say, Perez, you're a fucking piece of shit. Like, don't come at me. So I've learned from that. I've learned that yelling is no good for anybody. It's just demeaning. You know, I could very, very calmly and collectedly say, hey, that's not what I asked for. I asked you to go get this, you know, so please go do that. And if we have to take it further, if I have to, you know, counsel you, then I guess we can do that. But I would prefer to give you the benefit of the doubt right now, which is that you're just going to go do what I asked you to go do. So that's number one. Number two, this is something that's very heavy and near and dear to my heart. Whether I have served with somebody or they're somebody from the past or somebody that I just met or anything like that, if somebody crosses my mind, I don't just keep that in my head. I reach out. Mm-hmm. So like I was just thinking about what it was like to come back from deployment, and a friend of mine who's deployed currently crossed my mind. And so instead of just thinking about him and thinking like, oh, well, that would suck. I hope that he feels good and okay or whatever, you know, that's the end of that thought. No, I put my thoughts into action. And so I texted him and I was like, hey man, I'm going to pass to you a story that was given to me and you can do what you want with it. And so I gave him a story that a pastor had given to me about what it's like to come back home to your wife or to your husband and what that looks like. I thought it was really great advice. So I gave it to him. He may not even care about that, but to me, that's me showing that I care about you. I'm thinking about you, and I'm putting that into action because if I'm thinking about somebody, then they're obviously important enough to reach out to as well.
Yeah.
So those are two things that I do. The third and final solution that I have, and all of these are difficult to do because if it's not something that you're used to doing, it's going to feel kind of uncomfortable to do, and you don't want to cross boundary lines. But the third thing is I watch my soldiers and my sailors just incredibly close, and I don't push them. I don't push them in terms of like, so if I'm being evaluated, like you guys have evaluations and we have NCOERs, I don't think I'm going to push my E4 who's about to get out to become an E5. I'm not going to push him to do that. If he tells me once firmly that he does not want to do it because he has a different plan, and I have somebody in mind when I'm thinking about this, then I will encourage his plan. I will not take away or degrade his plan.
You're going to be supportive.
I'm going to be supportive of his plan. And his plan was to take the nursing test to get into nursing school. And his plan was to not be burdened by becoming an E5 when he knew he was getting out in less than a year. You know? So, just because it would be good for my evaluation does not mean that I'm going to put that on somebody. There's no point, even if you hate the military, especially if you hate the military, there's no point in grinding your people down into elbow grease just to make you look good.
Yeah.
There's just no benefit to that for any person, because when the day does come that person does something that is a forever solution, you'll never forget it.
Nope. The higher up you get, anyways, even starting off, whatever position you're in, you need to be about your people. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, have that drive and desire to climb that ladder, but don't step on your people to get up. There needs to be a lot of, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
If you're good at your job and you study, you're going to make that rank. You're going to climb. Mm-hmm. You need to be there for your people. Especially the higher up you get, because I see it just fade and fade more and more with people who just keep climbing up that ladder. Like, be there.
Yeah.
Be supportive, like you're saying. 100%. Know your people.
Yeah.
Try to do what you can for your people.
Yeah.
And then they'll learn too, because like you said earlier, pretty much you might lead the way you were led. And I was brought up roughly, like people were assholes and rude and condescending, and I didn't like it at all. But then I found myself being that way.
Yeah.
And if you are like showing that you care, and like you can be patient, you can be supportive, you can know your people, you might be leading them, turning them into the type of person that's going to lead the same way that they were led, in a positive way. And then maybe even get rid of this like freaking negative mindset and toxic fucking behavior that we see all the time. If you're kind to that person and you're there for them, supportive, doesn't always mean you have to be a pushover, but if you're supportive, maybe they're going to be supportive to the next person. And we're probably not going to see it in our lifetime in the military, but maybe eventually, not just military, but just everything, maybe people will be a little bit kinder.
Yeah. I mean, and then they, I always hear in the back of my head, well, you got to do what you're told. Yeah, you do. You do need to do what you're told. But I also know that my loyalty to that NCO out of fear was non-existent. I had no loyalty to her. It was all fear, And then the NCO who came in and like saved me from her unknowingly, I would have followed her anywhere because I trusted her, because she fought for me, because she realized and saw that I was not a piece of shit. I was just in a really bad situation with this one NCO. And, the people who you care for will want to follow you.
Yeah.
Fear does not make anybody do anything.
No.
Fear is what leads to the Vietnam era of putting your superior on the front line and you're the bullet that takes them out. Because that was a very common thing in the Vietnam era. And that's the last thing that we want. We don't want to. It's like raising children, like when I started to look at my soldiers like they were children, like my kids, even though I don't have kids, I started to feel like way more responsible for their emotional well-being. And there was one kid in particular in Bragg before I left, and everybody was so fucking mean to him. And he's a strong kid. So I don't worry too much for him because I keep in contact with him. But there was this day that he was like, Sergeant Perez, he's like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, man, I'm like, maybe I'll join the FBI or something. I don't know, like I would really love to do that. And he was like, well, be on the lookout for a phone call at this time on this day. And I was like, okay, dude.
Like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? And so I get this phone call, right? And I would never release the name or whatever, but this guy called me and he said, so I hear that you're the one NCO who doesn't treat my son like shit. And it turns out this guy had a very high-ranking position in the FBI and wanted to give me as much information as I wanted.
You almost made me cry.
Yeah. And I loved that kid, He was weird. He was totally weird. He was such an oddball. But I loved it. I loved, because he was a unique individual. He was so funny. And people, they just want the run-of-the-mill, You know, when you are a shallow concept of a human being, all you want around you are shallow concepts of a human being. But when you
Yeah.
have substance to who you are, you know, then you want others who have substance around you, and you want to treat them with respect and love and kindness because, you know, someday they're going to have soldiers and you don't want them to treat people like shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you have any suggestions though on how, with all of your experience? I mean, I have not had any soldiers. I did know one soldier that did commit suicide, and it often does. I think about it. I think about our one interaction that we did have together and how nice he was to me. I think about that a lot. I was being made fun of because at the time I was a female and I had this pride fist on my water bottle. And this platoon sergeant, he was like, "Oh, I bet that's the international sign for lesbians fisting, huh?" And he came over. He was an E5. I wasn't yet. And he was like, "Dude, shut the fuck up." He just like got in between me and that person. And so when we got our stand down while I was on deployment and we found out that he went home and committed suicide, it was a shock, man. Sometimes the ones that are struggling the most are also the ones that are protecting everybody. So
It's a wrecking mindset, a wrecking thought. You know. I hate that I don't have much of a solution, and maybe one day I'll like think of something, but all I can say is personally, and for anybody who is dealing with someone who's frustrating to them or is annoying to them, like just try to fucking take yourself out of that situation. And I know it's cliche to say, but put yourself in their shoes. You don't know what the fuck they're going through. You know, find that boundary and just try not to be a shit person. You know, because it's not going to feel good for you, their family, their friends, whenever you find out that they did something that's, you know, irreversible. And there's nothing, this job is not so important that it's an excuse, or it's just such a big thing that it's an excuse to be rude and to be cruel to somebody, you know. And just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you have to. There's a kid I used to work with that, can't say kid, he's older than me, but everyone was mean to him. Everybody. And it didn't matter how, like, shitty the person was, if you want to say that. Like, I always had his back, always supported him. He would frustrate me, but I would still always, like, stick up for him. Because it's just fucked up. And I'd already experienced people taking their lives. And it's just like, and I would tell people, how the fuck are you going to feel about what you just said and did when you find out that he's killed himself? You know, if you were to ever go that route.
yeah.
Like, how would that make you feel? Would you feel good about yourself? Would you feel like you're a fucking man, a fucking big, strong woman just because you could fucking belittle somebody? Like, every time I would say that. And there was a kid that I was friends with that, you know, was just piggybacking off people and making fun of this dude. And I was like, I'm extremely disappointed in you. And that's all I said. Because I knew that, like, if I got on his case, it wasn't going to, you know, sink in. And I didn't know if that was even going to sink in. But I was like, I'm just disappointed in you. You should know better. And I have shut down many times people shit talking this dude. Because, yeah, he's frustrating. Who cares? Whatever. That gives nobody any fucking excuse to be cruel. Mm-hmm. I fucking hate that. There are so many things in life that are going to frustrate you about people. It's no excuse, no right to be cruel to somebody. No right. I don't give a fuck who you are. You know, just put yourself in their shoes and fucking just try to be a decent human being.
Yeah.
You know, if you, like, are concerned, ask the question. That's another really hard one.
Yeah.
Actually asking somebody. I mean, we get told that all the time. Ask. And that's hard. But
actually, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up because it kind of brought some things to mind. The reason that this podcast, this particular one, is so important is because I would like for others to have skills that they can walk away from with this podcast in mind. First and foremost, there's a big difference between suicidal ideation and suicidal intention. You know, a lot of people want to die. A common thing that you'll hear is, sometimes I'll be driving and I just think, would I really be that missed if I just rammed my car into the side of the highway? That's suicidal ideation. Yeah. It's not necessarily an intent to want to do it, but it is a thought. And there are a lot of people who struggle with things like that, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to call the doctor and the chaplain and the psychologist and the psychiatrist. A conversation is all it takes, and yes, that does take brain power. It really does. And are we ill-equipped? Yes, we are ill-equipped. I mean, like, how much responsibility does the military genuinely expect 25, 26-year-old NCOs to have in deterring a person from committing suicide? A lot. They expect us to have a lot of influence on those people, but it really can be something that you do. You can just, first and foremost, here's something that most people don't know. If you get the chaplain involved, whether they are religious or they're not, the chaplain is the best resource and the first person that you should take somebody to. I'm not religious at all, but I would rather talk to the chaplain than to a psychologist 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10. Well, because the chaplain usually has a lot of experience in de-escalating situations and getting a person. So, okay, going and speaking straight to a psychologist or like turning them into the chain of command automatically takes away their right to privacy, right? Mm-hmm. But if you say, I would like to go with you to the chaplain, and we're going to get you resources, and you can do counseling with the chaplain that's not necessarily religious, but just counseling in general.
Yeah.
They give you resources that nobody's aware that you're even using. And if the chaplain does decide to disclose based upon his or her conversation with the person that they have to disclose it to the company commander, that's something that they have to do if they deem it necessary. But most times when you find a person who's willing to even talk about these things, they're not like at that point where they're going to commit suicide. They're at that point where they need help and they don't know what it is that they need the help of. The chaplain usually has been in the business for about 10 to 15 years and knows what all the programs are. They know about the military organizations that'll help you. They know about financial relief. They know about financial counseling. They know about if you need marriage counseling. They know what psychologists you can go to, which psychiatrists you should go to. They know these things because this is their bread and butter. They are there to help. Again, I am not religious, but I recommend utilizing the chaplain.
Yeah, they're just like a good source of
huge
information.
Source.
I can see that being like a good route to take.
Another thing is if you feel that it's necessary to involve your chain of command in something, involve just your chain of command, like your NCOIC, your SEL, your E7, your platoon sergeant, your first sergeant, your company commander, just them. Do not go and tell everybody else in the company, oh, guess what so-and-so wants to do. Guess what this and this person wants to do.
That makes me angry.
I've seen it plenty of times. Like, oh, guess what? Because there are some people who are just, they love to destroy people with rumors and talk. And that person who is struggling does not need rumors and talk. What they need is genuine, solid leadership.
And you got to be able to trust too who you're going to. If you do decide that that's the route you want to take, which I hope everyone would try that.
Yeah.
You got to fucking trust them.
Absolutely.
Like, I know I'm not going to go talk to somebody that fucking says, like, I hear say shit about other people and say their business. That's not someone I'm going to go to. And someone in the chain of command needs to fucking be trustworthy in these situations.
Yeah. The other thing that I would like to point out, aside from going to a chaplain, you will not get in trouble. I don't give a fuck who tells you. You will not get in trouble. I'm going to look at the camera. You will not get in trouble if you go and seek behavioral health services. You will not get in trouble. There are hundreds of resources all over every Navy, Army, Air Force, and even Marine base hundreds of resources. I hate when I hear people tell me, oh, I think I'm going to get in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
No, you will not get in trouble. What will get you in trouble is if you start to act out in a negative way and nobody knows that you're struggling. Go and get counseling. Go to psychiatry. Go and do all these things. Are there certain things that you have to worry about? Yeah, if they put you on a medication that makes you undeployable, but that's not the first step. That's not the first step. That's 5 or 6 steps down the line. The first step is talking. The second step is making sure you're sleeping. The third step is, making sure that you're working out and then testing all of your levels to make sure that you don't have a hormonal imbalance, because sometimes it's as simple as not having enough testosterone in your body, and or your thyroid is acting up or something. There's so many different things that lead to a person not feeling at their best.
Yeah.
And for anyone to say that you're going to get in trouble, try me. You're not. You're not going to get in trouble. You're just not going to. You're going to get what you need, which are the resources to help yourself. Might it take you out of your company for a little while? Yes.
But at that point, you should be definitely putting yourself first.
Yes.
Because your company or your command or whatever, they're not going to do that. You have to be your own advocate. You have to put yourself first. And then sometimes it's hard and a shitty, difficultness behind it trying to do that. But I think that if no one else is going to care about you, you got to care about you.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many chain of commands that, or companies or command teams or whatever you want to call them. The 82nd is a great example for me. Like, I tore my ACL. I did not tear my ACL. Somebody punched me in the fucking knee and tore my ACL, right? And I remember that I couldn't do PT at all because my ACL was torn. And I felt like the biggest piece of shit in the world. And I walked up to my first sergeant and my company commander, and I was like, and my first sergeant is just a really intense dude. And I was like, I feel like a piece of shit. Like, I'm really sorry that I can't do all these things. And they're like, listen, we know you didn't tear your own ACL. We know that you got hurt. Just take this time, relax. Like, we're going to take you off of airborne status. We're going to make sure that you can recover and recuperate. And that one conversation meant the world to me, because then I didn't feel like a piece of shit leaving that duty station. Yeah. I felt like I just got hurt, and sometimes that happens. And we've got to look at our own minds like that too. Like, hey, I'm hurt, and I need to put me first for a little while.
And that is 100% okay.
Yeah.
Because somebody can come up and take the position you're in and cover for you.
Yep.
Like, they'll find somebody somewhere.
They sure will.
Because they got to keep rolling. So and maybe that's a sad thought too, I don't know, but whether you're there or not, the job's going to get done. So if you step out to take care of yourself, that is okay.
Yeah.
That is perfectly okay.
It is kind of a sad thought to think about the fact that we're so easily replaceable, but I will pass this on to anybody who's watching. Our dad has often, and I'm sure he's had the same conversation with you that he does with me. He said, this is just a stepping stone. Right now is just it's a leap pad. You're just at this spot right now, but the next spot is going to be somewhere else. And the military, whatever branch you're in or organization, it's just one spot. It's not forever. Even if you do 20 years, you're going to be in 7 or 8 different chain of commands. You're going to be all over the freaking world. You're going to have deployed maybe several or no times, because some people don't always deploy. Mm-hmm. And eventually you're going to have to get out. So even if you do everything the right way and you are the best thing in the world, eventually you will retire. And you will be on to the next stepping stone.
Yeah.
So whether that stepping stone is right now that you need to be going to the next one, or it's in 20 years, it's still just a stepping stone.
It made me think of that Dr. Seuss's book, Oh, the Places You'll Go.
Yeah.
Read that. Everybody needs to read that. That is the most applicable book I've ever fucking experienced. And it's a fucking rhyming book. It's so fucking simple, but it literally fucking applies to everything.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll help. I don't know.
I have no doubt that it will. All the Places that you'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great book. But, the key points are that we have experienced pain. Mm-hmm. You have experienced a tremendous amount of loss, more so than most people I've never had anyone personally, like, aside from the one guy that was nice to me the one time. You know, it's so difficult to put myself in your shoes. I can't even imagine. But I know that you're stronger and that you've thought a lot more because of it. You know, and these conversations need to happen because, quite frankly, I don't ever hear anybody have these conversations. You know, nobody wants to have these difficult conversations because they're taboo topics, right? But if it was really that taboo, it would never happen.
It's an extremely common occurrence.
Yeah.
So the conversations need to be had more.
Yeah.
And the help needs to be available. So.
Absolutely. So talk to your soldiers or sailors. Talk to your chaplain. If you have concerns about somebody and you don't know how to approach the subject, speak to your chaplain first. And then you can come up with a plan with your chaplain to deal with your person. After that, make sure that behavioral health gets involved because it's for the best of the soldier. And the last thing that you want is for them to be ill-prepared to deal with the fallout of some people knowing.
Yeah.
The other thing is encourage healthy, clean communication. No one will ever forget two things. They will never forget the person who was kind, and they will never forget the person who was cruel. If you're in between, nobody remembers you. So, you have anything else to say?
It's cliche, but be kind and love everybody. You know? Be a nice person.
Yeah.
Think about the other person.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't be an asshole.
It's not that cliche because not that many people do it.
Hopefully it changes.
Yeah. Well, that's the hope.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for coming on and telling, and having this conversation with me because I know that it's a rough one.
It is.
Yeah. So I appreciate you giving your time to me.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We're out.
Bye. Fucking edit that out.